You only hear from your agency clients when things are going wrong. Or at least that's what it seemed like for 17 years. Cliff Tillery has been in SEO for almost 2 decades, and he's seen clients show up, disappear, and then come back, but it doesn't have to do with how good the SEO strategy is.
Google's looking at your site and maybe your Google business profile fundamentally to determine whether or not you should be ranked. Whereas AI looks across the internet and all the data points about your brand. AI isn't providing the number of links. Google wants to keep you on Google.
See, agencies are fighting 2 battles right now. They're fighting all the algorithm changes and AI at the same time, and they're also fighting how to communicate the differences to their clients.
I'd say 70% of the people that walk in our door or call us have been burned by somebody else in our industry. Roughly 45% of the consumers now are using AI to search for local businesses, but yet the traffic from that isn't transferable. It's less than 1%. I think the challenge for everybody in our industry now is to move away from being a vendor and move toward being more of a partner.
In today's episode, Cliff reviews the vibe-coded apps that he created to solve problems within his agency and then extract the frameworks to then install in the client's businesses. So if churn has gone up in your agency and traffic has gone down, this is a great episode to learn how to hang on to your clients even through the dips. I'm Austin Willman, and this is E-Coffee with Experts. Cliff, you were just telling me that one of the offers that you're leaning into is doing research for clients. The
Right.
research aspect, aside from just general, just general competitor analysis for SEO, is not something that's being offered as a service. How are you approaching
Right.
that? What does that mean?
Appreciate that question. First of all, it's like eating an elephant one bite at a time. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the list of our SEO clients and stepping back and thinking in terms of, okay, what kind of research could we potentially pull off and do for the client that would increase their authority on Google and AI and all aspects of them. It also gives them content that they can own, they can publish any way they want. Potentially attract backlinks, of course, which is always a factor. Release press releases about this content and give them social media content for weeks to talk about. So case in point, one study I just finished for a roofing client of ours, gives them storm damage report, which is for their local county. This actually gives them both storm damage reports for their counties for thunderstorms, hail. It also takes the roofing, the construction data and looks at, the average roof. The assumption is the average roof lasts 20 to 25 years before it needs significant repairs or replacement. So it's a recon tool. This report is actually, helpful for them in that sense to decide whether or not this county is even worth pursuing. As it turns out, the county where we did the study for have 86,000 homes built in, 20, 25 years ago. So, that gives you an idea of, maybe this is a good market for us to pursue. Although, the caveat to that is you can't swing a rubber chicken over your head without smacking another roofer.
Yeah.
So, and there's the difference between helping them establish their business as an authority, because any chuck in a truck and a ladder can call himself a roofer, but have you got the credentials to prove it, to stand behind that? That's an essential piece. So we're looking at various models of what we can do. I've got a client that does CPR training, and I'm in the process of collating some data from the number of cardiac arrest events that occur in this county versus the standard CPR rate and survival rate of with CPR, without CPR. And I'm looking at building a study for this particular client that will help potentially motivate people to take more CPR classes in order to save lives. So using data-driven content to put it on their site. Sometimes, the roof report I put behind a gate to just collect leads. So it's a lead magnet as well as documentation that we're going to put on the website, non-gated, because I want AI and Google to pick it up. So those are kind of the ideas that I'm starting to formulate and kind of hack out. Am I using AI with this? Absolutely, of
Oh,
course.
yeah.
Although I do have a background and I've done research studies before. So, I'm not new to that. I love
Yeah.
statistics, which it's in my wheel well, essentially.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I
I
mean,
said,
you
hey,
know
well,
who else loves statistics is AI. I mean,
yeah,
we were just talking before we started the podcast that yes, the foundation of GEO is just sound SEO fundamentals, but there
right.
are some differences of what AI is looking
Major.
for, how to get cited, and that's something that you help your clients with. Get AI citations showing up in AI overviews. I would imagine that the research studies have a big part of that. What else are you looking for in order to get AI visibility for your clients?
Well, like you said, first of all, I think in order to answer that and to fully understand it, we have to split the difference between what does Google look for, what does AI look for. As we all know, and I simplify this for my prospects and my clients, I tell them, look, Google's looking at your site and maybe your Google business profile fundamentally to determine whether or not you should be ranked. Whereas AI looks across the internet and
Mm,
all the data points about your brand. What I start helping business owners look at is the concept of brand entity. So your brand as an entity itself, and how does AI pull data points in order to define that entity? So that, as we talked about, can be press releases, articles,
mhm,
newspaper articles, magazine, trade journals, those kind of things. Your reviews are obviously a part of that. And I told you I'm getting into vibe coding pretty
mhm,
heavy. One of the things I'm looking at is building an internal tool just to review the sentiments. It's a sentiment review tool that
mm,
will just look at Google reviews and go, here's a summary.
yeah.
And you can use some of that verbiage directly for your marketing, assuming your reviews are good.
Yeah, right, right.
So that's
Totally.
a whole other conversation. Well,
Yeah.
right. And that's a whole nother conversation if they're not. So let's not use that content, but let's start working on getting better reviews. Maybe it's an organization or fulfillment issue. Could be a management issue. Could be a lot of things. So we definitely work more from a consulting perspective now with our clients more than we ever have. I've been doing SEO for 17 years, and for, you know, more than a decade, it's, hey, hire me and I'll go do my thing and send you reports every so often. Here's my cell phone if you have any questions. And I never hear from clients. Worse, I've forgotten clients' names because I haven't talked to them in so long,
Yeah.
because I'm just doing the work,
Mhm.
and I know there are reputations out there with SEO agencies. Some people that say they do SEO take their money and run. I'm
Mm.
not that way. I'm still doing the work, but and I'm looking at the data and figuring out what's next and what kind of content. But the
Mhm.
days of just cranking out city targeted landing pages, I think, are not dead, but they're limping hard and they're
Yeah.
wounded. It's not working as effectively. Will it get you somewhere on Google? Certainly.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Nowhere near the level that we want for ourselves, much less our clients. So, and that's our business practice right there, is do the right thing for yourself, do the right thing for your clients. I've even changed the way I do reporting because of
Mm.
that whole, send a report once a month and, be done with it.
Mhm.
Now I'm working on engaging with my clients much more actively. Some are open to that.
Mhm.
Some won't return emails.
Yeah.
Some don't want to play. And honestly, I gotta leave them where they're at, I gotta
Yeah.
meet them where they're willing to come. So some are like, I've talked to several this week, and they've been excited about, the concept of doing research with
Mm.
their minimal input, which is the goal. Some of it I can pull from public data, some of it not so much, but, that's where we're starting, and I'm super excited about it, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, AI does play a big part, not just in discovery for customers to your clients, but also
Right.
operationally. And you mentioned getting into vibe coding pretty heavily.
Big
Those I would imagine that you identify a problem internally, operationally, like doing research or checking for citations or scanning reviews, and then you build a solution that's custom to you, but it
right.
sounds like you might be able to take a version of that and actually implement it into a client's business. I'm curious about the two different aspects. One, what have you built internally that helps you with your own
Mhm.
SEO operations? And then the second
Sure.
part of that question is what sort of tools or workflows or, anything else that you've built for your clients?
Yeah. I haven't, and let me take that in parts. At this point, I've only built one app so far that we haven't quite finished yet. We're in the process of tweaking before we put it in the hands of our clients. And that one essentially is kind of a case study building app where
Mm,
they give us minor details similar to a contact form. They fill out some basic information about the project, give us a before and after picture if possible, then that automatically goes to AI where that's written into content that can then go onto their site in a draft mode on a page on their website. So that is a case study building app that can help us build the site's authority that way. We've been done way more internal app building,
hmm
I admit, to the point now where I'm starting to look at kind of putting some of these apps together to make a mothership app.
Yeah.
But we started with an app that I wanted to, I mean, ultimately, I'm lazy. Okay. That's the mother of all invention, right? And with all of the details that SEO involves, I want to build an SEO tool that just does it. You put
Yeah.
in the domain, you put in access, and it just does it. Now, there are some tools out there that say they do that. I have tested some. I don't like them. They don't
Yeah.
you don't know what's really going on, and I haven't seen results with it, that kind of thing. Now, I've built an app that does automated alt tags and meta descriptions. That's the only automated part that it does so far. I named him Henry. And so Henry will do those things. He also builds in schema to any bulk landing, city targeted landing pages we build. But I can give him multiple templates and he goes and builds different looking city targeted landing pages that changes the content. It's unique content per that city. And that's been working pretty well. I mean, my team has gone, holy crap, in terms of
Yeah.
time saving for us. It is massive time saver. It also helps build internal links with the site, which
Mm,
also helps SEO that way. Now, that was my first foray into pretty heavy duty vibe coding, and it's gone very, very well. I'm very proud of that, actually. Is it perfect? Not even close. I'm always looking at ways to improve it. And one of the ways I improved it was, unfortunately, I built another app that is the brains of Henry.
mm,
What this does is pull data from Google Analytics and Google Search Console and reports that data to Henry and then sets us up with certain tasks that we can either do automatically or approve or look at in deeper
mm.
context to look at what we need to do to improve the site's visibility. So those are two examples of how we've used vibe coding. Literally I had like 15 minutes to between my last task and this,
Yeah.
I started a vibe coding for that Google review sentiment. And,
Mm,
I think that can be something that we can use internally to bring out more information about our clients that can be helpful. We'll see.
yeah.
But 9 times out of 10, it's just playing with ideas,
Yeah.
and talking to AI about them and kind of running with them from there.
Yeah.
So I'm excited about this. This is a part of the SEO environment that I'm kind of like, okay, now this is a reason to get out of bed. This is new.
Yeah.
This is different. This is kind of okay. And I've heard SEO guys talk about how ranking in AI is similar to the old days when we just threw up things and ranked in Google. I haven't found that to be the case yet,
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
but you know, you
Yeah.
we'll
So
get there.
yeah, slowly but surely we're finding our way. You're right. I found the same thing. Like you can build pretty much anything you want, and the barrier between me and my ideas is, the road is not that long anymore, at least to an MVP. And
Right.
I
Right.
agree with your sentiment of like,
Your
you know what?
imagination.
Whatever I build, it's not perfect, but it helps me solve a problem. But what I have seen is,
Right.
especially from talking with SEOs, is they all talk about this Mount LLM or like Mount AI, I don't know, whatever you call it, where you
Yeah.
see traffic and rankings and everything increase from AI generated content because they're able to produce more blogs, or they think they're better and they're doing all these slick kind of citations and I don't even know, like token optimization and things like that. But then
Right.
after 30 days or so, there's another crawl and everything just slides back down a
Right.
hill. You mentioned you've tried out a couple of these tools. You don't need to, name them or anything.
Yeah. No, I'm not.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, not that we're sponsored by them or anything like that, but
But I don't
I'm
want
curious.
to. Yeah, they're improving.
Yeah, I'm curious how you perceive AI content because from everything that you've shared so far, it seems like it helps you with research or organization or meta tags, like you said, or schema, kind of like the
Yeah.
structure and the organization, but not really on creation, other than the case studies app, which that's I guess that's a little bit different of a scenario.
Yeah.
What's your perspective on content creation?
Well, okay, let me to get to the root of that question. Let me tell you a little bit of irony. I went away to college back in 1982 as a computer science major. And for
Mm,
3 years, I was a comp sci major, was killing myself to get a degree in computer science. Came time to do an internship. My supervisor sat me down and said, okay, it's time to get an internship. At the time, I was taking Calc 4 assembly language statistics and English lit to keep my sanity. I was a published poet in the college, rag. And by the time she asked me to get an internship in computer science, I told her I'd rather swallow broken glass than spend my life debugging 1,000 line codes. I
yeah.
was just done. I was
Yep.
done. And to that end, I ended up flipping a coin between journalism and psychology. So I
Mm,
have a journalism in my undergrad.
mm,
I worked for 20 years as a drug counselor. So and I got a master's degree in community counseling education. So was a licensed professional counselor for years. Then I burned out spectacularly and I'm, started working in digital marketing back in '09. So the irony of me starting in computer science and then talking about vibe coding is not lost on me at all. So when AI came around in November of 2022, I was like, this is magical,
yeah.
and I thought it was fantastic. And, that I could ask it a question, it could just spit out all this content. And back then it was sort of okay content. It wasn't great. And I'd look at it and revise it and blah, blah, blah. That's still most of my process, but
Hmm.
I love the fact that when I've done testing and I've used SEM Rush's grader, content grader, writing assistant grader to kind of use this and go, okay, I'll write a page and then I'll have it write a page for my client and we'll compare the two. When AI is scoring better, ugh,
Mm,
that hurts me emotionally
yeah.
as a journalist, but at the same time, the trade-off is hard, is seductive, you
Yeah.
know? You can
Yeah.
whip out like I think for a while there, the most highest number of landing pages I ever produced was like 15 in a day. That's from writing ideas to writing to editing to publishing on a site.
Whoa.
15 was max. Once I built Henry, I was able to do 100 in
Wow.
a 2-day period, and I could do more, and so, I mean, that's crazy to look at the comparison trade-off. Now, I'm not saying that's what we should all do. I'm not saying that by any stretch. I really do think that the pendulum will swing back to where and Google's already you just gave me evidence of that,
Yeah.
where Google's already going, "Yeah, this is great on the start, but no,"
Yeah.
and there, the latest update in May was also targeting a lot of AI content. So on one hand, Google has had an interesting relationship with SEOs. They've hated us from the
Mm,
start. Then they hired a bunch of leaders,
mm,
and now it's okay. And I've even changed my perspective. It used to be gaming Google was the goal. Now it's making pages or websites page one worthy, and we're working with Google, which at the end of the day, I don't say that expression, but at the end of it all, Google still hates SEO because we're messing with their precious search results.
yeah.
I think I'm convinced they want us all on pay per click, but so I'm using AI more so as I should for ideas, brainstorming sessions, looking at frameworks and then
Mm.
filling in the frameworks from there. So that's a lot of what I'm still doing.
Hey, we hope you're enjoying the coffee and the conversation so far. This show is powered by Digital Web Solutions, and if you've ever wondered how the biggest brands actually build authority, this is it. DWS has a massive network of over 250,000 publishers, real sites that help you rank on Google, and more importantly, stay visible in AI search. It's the heavy lifting most teams just can't do on their own. As a thank you for listening, they're offering an exclusive free strategy call just for our eCoffee listeners. It's a great way to map out your authority plan for 2026. Just click the link below to book yours and see how they can help scale your brand. All right, now let's get back to the show. I think you're right. Like there is this, I perceive it too, the push of, if Google is just doing AI overviews and taking years of content and information that's unique and net new whenever it was
Right.
published, and then
Right.
aggregating it and giving us like an average, it kind of, it can be scary to be an SEO of like, well,
Sure.
what do you need me for?
Right.
Especially if I'm going to put in all this hard work, and then it just gets aggregated and clumped together. When you're looking at kind of a shift of gears, but just like a client comes on board and you take kind of an overall assessment of their social media presence and their web presence. I would imagine there's some sort of like onboarding slash audit that you do and you have a process for that. Where do you come in that onboarding experience, and what are you looking for? Like,
Sure.
yeah,
Sure.
I think that's where.
Well, first and foremost, you're right. You got to look at all their digital assets. Do they have everything?
Mm,
I got the roofing client I'm doing the report for, they still don't have a Google business profile. So, and that's one of those where I go, okay, and I've walked them through as much as I can with all that. So that's fundamental. And so I look at what's missing.
mhm,
And that's the first conversation I have with the client after the introduction. Hey, this is who I am. This is what we're going to do. Blah blah blah. And we develop an initial strategy with assessing their site, the authority on their site. We do a quick review in AI to see if they're showing up for anything. Chances are they're not,
mhm,
most often. We do a quick spot checks, that kind of thing to see if they're ranking for anything. We run them through the domain overview and SEMrush and that kind of thing to help us with that. We start doing the keyword research, knowing and call me an old dog. I still start with keyword research with the understanding that the keywords are building topics, and we begin to formulate a topical map for each client and start looking at potentially low hanging fruit. Where
mm,
are they on page 2 for anything? Can we find them anywhere in the Google search results or AI? And then we start formulating the plan for the content. I'll be honest, most of our clients want one thing, and they really don't care how we get it.
yeah,
What they want is their phone to ring.
mhm,
And like I said, in the old days when we were sending out monthly reports, the ones we heard from were the ones that the phone wasn't ringing for. That was a measure of our success. Now, we also were highly recognizing the fact that we had no idea if they were getting phone calls or not. Sometimes they
yeah,
could not be getting calls. And, we closed that gap with Google Tag Manager pretty well. It's not completely closed, but, we can look at forms and that kind of thing and see, generally speaking. In fact, I have a glass company who hit me up recently and said, I'm not getting any calls. I need to find somebody else. Well, we looked at the data and he's getting a lead a day minimum. So
yeah,
I'm like, and I did the math for him, and I haven't heard from him since.
hmm,
So he's one of those that I only hear from when he's disgruntled.
yeah,
And okay, it's not that I haven't reached out and I want to engage more. He just doesn't want to play. And okay, that's meet him where they are.
yeah,
That's what we have to do. So, he seemed either looking for another agency, or he seemed to be convinced that it's worth his money. So I don't
yeah,
know what the actual response was because he didn't give me one. But so that's really where we start, and then we start laying out the plan of action once we have an understanding of where the client's digital assets are. And I
mm,
think that's not unique by any stretch. In fact, that's one of the things I talk about with my boss all the time, is that
mm,
much of what we do from a customer facing front, web design, SEO, pay per click, is not, it's a commodity,
mm,
for a lot of business owners. They go, yeah, yeah, yeah. I think, I tried Google AdWords, it didn't work. Well,
mhm,
if you tried it by yourself, it's a great way to set your money on fire.
yeah,
So there's that. Have you
yeah,
done it with an agency that knows what they're doing? you know,
yeah, yeah,
yeah, a lot of them out there do, but then again, there's a lot that don't. And I'd say 70% of the people that walk in our door or call us have been burned by somebody else in our industry,
yeah,
which is, it breaks my heart. And that motivates me to do the right thing for the client more aggressively. And I
mhm,
am a very aggressive SEO nerd. So I joke about it and I say, contractually obligated. I'm contractually obligated to say it takes 3 to 6 months to get you results. It really depends.
yeah,
Depends on the industry. Depends. I have a friend of mine who does SEO, and he does 3 to 5 content publishing content for the client a month. And I'm like,
mhm,
3 to 5 blog a month? And that's all? And he's like, "Yeah." And he charges less, but I'm
Yeah.
going, "Well, how long does it take you to get results?" He goes, "I don't know." And I'm like, "What do you mean you don't know?
What?
Get
You're
me
the
that
problem.
right. Like, stop already."
Yeah.
I mean, he literally has a governor on the amount of work that he does. Now, to be fair, he's a one-guy shop.
Yeah.
So and he's had clients that he doesn't have churn. He has
Yeah.
clients that he's had for years. And the
Mm.
average SEO agency loses a client within, they say a year to 2 years is what
Mhm.
I've read. For the past 2 years, the churn for us has been boom. And it's
Yeah.
not because we're not doing work, and it's not because we're not getting them ranked.
Yeah.
It's because AI is bigger.
Mhm.
45%, roughly 45% of the consumers now are using AI to search for local businesses, but yet the traffic from that isn't, you know, transferable. It's less than 1%. So
Yeah.
how do you explain that gap? Well, I tell clients, people, how do you use AI? They'll go, I'm in ChatGPT for something else. And I go, I need a plumber. Get a list of plumbers. They go and put that into Google. So your direct attribution numbers should be different if you're showing up in AI. That should be something that is a kind of a major metric for you to keep your eye on that way
Mhm.
because of how people, AI isn't providing the number of links. Google wants to keep you on Google.
Right.
So that's the difference that I help people understand and kind of trace back and look at. So all
Yeah.
of that's shifting at light speed though.
Yeah. 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 Correlation is not causation and, all those other cliches, but you're right, like, the branded search tends to increase as we see AI usage increase as well because of that
Right.
exact crossover. As we kind of get to the end of the conversation here, what KPIs are you still looking at and still reporting on, like, that actually matter for you guys?
Great question. I'd love to give you the list of the major ones. We had an issue with SEMrush in May where essentially our visibility scores were tanking and we weren't doing anything different. And we do
Mhm.
spot checks and find the clients ranking in local spot checks. And so we used to use visibility score for a metric, and I would train my clients. Okay, this is the major metric that we're looking at to give us an indication of good, bad, not so much anymore because I've got trust issues with my major ranking tool. Now, I'm probably an Ahrefs guy is going to call me after hearing this, but which is fine. I'm open to that conversation, but
Yeah.
I'm not ready to move yet, but maybe, talk me into it
Mm.
but for sure, because I know Ahrefs is very popular and that's the only
Mhm.
one I think I'd probably look at. So we still, and I had a rep, an SEO guy tell me, traffic is not the major metric to look at anymore. And I'm like, that'll have my claw marks all over that one before I let that one go. Hell no. I mean,
Mm.
to me, website traffic has to be because again, does everybody that hits your site convert? No, not when a higher number of your traffic is now AI bots. We
Mhm.
have to kind of contend to that. And I'm not talking to my clients about that actively as much, but it's a factor I'm aware of. So, at the end of the day, I got to look at form fill outs. I got to look at number of calls in the business. I got to look at Google profile metrics has become more significant now than it
Mm.
has been before. So I'm looking at the very numbers of people that are calling, and obviously the major metric that I'm asking, and I'm talking to the business owner. How's business? How's your bottom
Yeah.
line? How's June going to be? Those are the things that I'm looking at that should matter the most to every one of us in the industry. So my hope is that with our shifting with how our reporting process is going to change, that
Mm.
I'll have more of those conversations that the customers they don't always feel comfortable sharing their bottom line. They'll give us general ideas, but I think that's where we need to look at is the direct numbers of people that are hitting your site. I still want to look at what numbers that SEO is coming from and pay per click if we're doing it or they are. So those are all still relevant numbers by far. But I want forums, I want leads, I want to hear that kind of numbers. Those numbers improve going forward.
Yeah.
Everything else is just an indicator of are we on the right path?
Yeah. It almost seems like active versus sort of passive, I guess. Like a form fill is an intentional action that a user takes. A phone call is an
Correct.
intentional, it's an outbound action that a user takes. Traffic, you're right. It could be bots, but we can segregate that. But it's
Yeah.
much more passive, much more like, I'm consuming information. I'm not taking an action. And as you were sharing, thinking back to the guy who's a one man show, I guess, and how he has a high retention rate. I wonder if because he doesn't have a team that he has to contend with and, HR and all of that, he can actually spend more time communicating with the clients, building the relationship. He's probably in contact with them a lot more on the good or the bad side. And I
Right.
think that at the end of the day, understanding psychology, you went journalism, I went the psychology route in college. So I have
I'm
a
with both.
psychology. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm with both. Yeah, I'm
You got
good.
both. I think at the end of the day, people just wanna be heard and understood and feel like they're seen. So, as in an agency space, I think those sort of softer skills or those sort of metrics they play in to the success of the agency and the success of the client and the retention of the client. I'm gonna bookmark that, but it sounds like that would be
Yeah.
a conversation to come back to.
100%. I think the challenge for everybody in our industry now is to move away from being a vendor and
Mm,
move toward being more of a partner. Because
mm,
as we all know, small to mid-sized businesses, when times get rough, where do they cut? Marketing.
marketing.
And that is cutting your own jugular. And as much as I can talk about that, it's a whole lot easier to cut a vendor than it is a partner
Yeah,
who is in your corner, who says, "Yes, the economy right now sucks, but we're looking for ways to improve your authority, visibility, numbers of calls, customers, all of that. We're with you during this hard time." That's a lot better approach in my mind,
yeah,
all
yeah.
day, every day.
Yeah, there was a mentor who once told me, he said, "You need to look for people who are in your corner and in your circle." I was like, "Oh, I
Yeah.
like that juxtaposition. That's cool." Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, be a
A
that you
small,
can
mid-sized business. So, we
exactly,
get it,
exactly,
when you
yeah,
struggle, we
from one to another. Yeah. Cliff, thank you for sharing your insights and the strategies and
sure.
all the cool things you're working on the podcast today. Where can we learn more about you and if
Sure.
we want to reach out to you, what's the best channel?
Yeah, honestly, I'm fine with you reaching out at our agency, which is 678-325-4007, and makeitloud.net is our website. Just call us and we'll be happy to have any kind of conversation you want to have about how you want to grow your business. Everything we do is based in best ROI for what you do, not for us. It's about
Mm.
for you. So that's how we've been successful for 22 years.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, that's a long time to be serving clients. So congrats on all the success and the longevity of the business. Quick question as we close out. Why is it .net and not .com?
Well, we actually finally bought the .com, but when we initially started, the founder the .com was taken.
Yeah.
Recently, they wanted like 6 grand for the
Yeah.
.com, and we're like, "Pfft, no." And so we finally bought it for, I think, 2 grand. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
That's it. That's it. All about ROI, baby.
it's always about that.
Very
I really
cool.
enjoyed talking to you. Awesome.
Same here. Thanks, Cliff.
Yeah, man. Have a good one.